G'day, Tragic here, and welcome to my final thoughts on Eldritch Horror. Now, this is probably the question that I've been asked the most since this game came out, not just on my channel, but in real life as well. Is Arkham Horror and Eldritch Horror the same game? Is Eldritch Horror a replacement, an upgrade? If I have Arkham Horror, do I need to get Eldritch Horror? If I have Eldritch Horror, do I need Arkham Horror? So, in this conversation, I guess you'll call it, I'm going to talk about my personal opinions of these games and how they compare. And hopefully not alienate all the people watching, because I think my opinions might be different from some. And firstly, there is a lot of really good things about Eldritch Horror. They have taken what is a rather convoluted and fairly clumsy game, especially once all the new rules are put into it, called Arkham Horror, and distilled down the general principles of what it's about. You have the success rolling, you have the discovery, the exploration, the randomization of the cards, and the complete event-driven style of gameplay. But in that simplification, in the way that simplification has been done, they have actually removed some of the key things that makes Arkham Horror so good. And they are just simply not in Eldritch Horror. And I'll get into that in a sec. But let's just first talk about this simplification and what they've been doing. And the great simplification, besides, little things like the removal of money and, taking away the modifying player stats and all these kind of things, they've introduced this idea of the comet, right? And the Doom track is now part of the Omen track. And these are coming out in event-based cards. Now, like at the end of the Mythos phase, you saw me, you draw these cards and they have these icons on it, and those icons trigger events in the game. Now, what is so fantastic about that is in Arkham Horror, I don't care if you're like the best Arkham Horror player in the history of the world, I guarantee you in a course of any particular game, you're going to make errors. If you say you're not making errors, then I don't believe you, basically. There is a lot of fiddly things that you just don't remember. And I have never seen an Arkham Horror game be played 100% perfect, even at conventions being run by the designers themselves. Things are just forgotten. And the reason they introduced these comet ideas is to completely remove that. So instead of remembering that every turn you're supposed to do this, or at the beginning of blah blah phase you have to do this, and these are not things that are in the rules, these are things in cards that you pick up. So you might play 20 games and never have to remember to do this. And then in one game, you'll suddenly have to remember to do something every single time you take a movement. So what they did, they've linked that to the comets. So you can just basically play the game ignoring all those fiddly things, and then when the comet turns up, you just check the game state and activate all the comets. And that's all very, very fine. And part of that same design concept is the Omen track. The Omen track activates based upon the gate positions. And here is the crux of one of the cruxes of the differences between Arkham Horror and Eldritch Horror. In Arkham Horror, it is a continual, ever-spiraling march to doom. There is no respite. Every single turn the Doom track moves. Every single turn a gate opens. When a gate spawn happens, every single gate spews out monsters. It's this continual pressure, and that pressure is a big part of what makes Arkham Horror so exciting to play. Because there's so much pressure as the turns go on, which in turn makes you play more and more desperately. And because you're playing so much more desperately, the wins that you do get, often you die, but when you do actually get the right roll, it is absolutely joyous because the pressure's so high. Now in Eldritch Horror, I think it was like turn 6 or something before the Doom track even moved. And you can control the Doom track speed by just closing gates, which is not nearly as hard because you don't need collectible items to close the gate. You just need to pass tests. Like in Arkham Horror, to close a gate, you need an Elder Sign or 6 clue tokens. In Eldritch Horror, you just need to pass like a strength test, which is like roll 1 success out of whatever you can afford from your dice pool. And what this means is that the game doesn't have that impending pressure of doom, of the Doom track moving constantly. it's more burst orientated because of the way the comets come in and activate things at once. So you're completely fine. You're going blah, 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 blah. This game's all right. I'm having a lot of fun. I'm not feeling much pleasure. And then bang, a comet will happen and boom, a big burst of problems. And it's like, oh no, the whole board's a mess now. There's monsters everywhere and I'm in a lot of trouble. And then you get over it. You get control of it again and the pressure disappears. So the pressure that the player feels goes up and down through these bursts. And in Arkham Horror, no. The pressure is constant. It's a constant pressure that just gets heavier and heavier and heavier, which, as I was saying, leads to more desperate actions from the player. And of course, the more desperate the action, the more satisfying and just relieving it is when they win. And I think that is a huge difference, a massive difference between the two games, and one that I prefer in Arkham Horror. Okay, so what else? There is another thing that I much prefer in Arkham Horror, as it's not even close. And that is, there's quite a funky system in this game where they've placed various result rolls on the back of item cards and spell cards and stuff like this. Like, when you gain a debt condition, right, you just gain a debt and you don't know what it is. And it's actually against the rules to turn it over and look. Right? Because some of the debts are, well, not just debts, like dark packs, like some dark packs are like you get devoured, and some dark packs are really mild, so it's against the law to turn these over. And the way it works is that you roll your dice and then you turn it over and then you have an extra level of, cost added to it. And this is a really great idea. I mean, it's a fantastic conceptual idea for a board game because it increases the variety. Every single debt condition is unique. Every single spell has a unique effect. And it just creates so much more variety and life inside the game. And that is fantastic. But it also removes one of the most important aspects of rolling dice. And that is knowing the stakes. When you roll dice, you need to know what you're rolling for. And if you don't know what you're rolling for, there is no joy in it. Like in Arkham Horror, I know that if I don't get 2 successes, something terrible is going to happen. But if I'm rolling for my spell in Eldritch Horror, all I know is that I can pass or fail, and then maybe something else bad is going to happen, but I don't know that risk. I don't know that I might lose 2 health if I fail in my summoning ritual, but that act of knowing that I might lose that 2 health, the understanding of the risks when you roll the dice adds to that. Oh, shake them up. Oh my God, can I make it? Can I make it? Can I make it? And that's missing from this game. Flipping a card over and looking at it and reading it and going, damn it, I lost 2 health, isn't the same as knowing you're going to lose health while you're trying to will the dice to hit the results you want. It's just a completely different effect on the player. But I hear you say, eventually you're going to know the risks because you're going to memorize the cards. You'll know that this will happen if you do this. But no, you won't. Well, I mean, some people will, but a lot of people won't. Because the entire concept of the Arkham Horror, Eldritch Horror expansion system is that the randomization of the cards makes such planning between games impossible. The whole point of having the card systems is to have them unique, have them always different every time you play it. So yeah, I just don't buy that argument at all. I mean, sure, once you've used it a few times, maybe, then you've used it, you know the risks after because you've already read the back legally then. But yeah, it's not I don't think it's the same thing. I mean, obviously there's strength tests and there are tests where you know what's going on, but the hidden information through the uniqueness of the card backs and also with the way the layered positioning of the outer world quests work is it just removes that tension as you roll the dice. And I find that it really made the game immeasurably duller. Like the rolling just did not seem as interesting. You were just rolling and you just roll it. Okay, well that's my dice. Now that I've seen what my results are, I now look up and find out what the costs are. Not knowing the costs before you roll is a huge problem in the way that I perceive fun when I roll dice. I like to know the risks, so I'm like going, right, can I make this, Otherwise you're just rolling and So I think that's a huge problem. And while this inability to evaluate risks happens mainly during the comet phase, where all the things trigger and you have to go through all your parts, all your conditions and all your things and roll the dice and find out what the effect is. That is not the only real instance of what I consider to be the less exciting dice rolling in this game. And it all goes back to what I was saying about the pressure in Arkham Horror. The pressure in this game is just not as strong, not even close. The Doom track, sometimes you go turns without a gate opening, turns without a Doom track opening. When monsters spawn, they're completely stationary, most of them anyway, and you just don't even need to deal with them. You know, it just doesn't have the same pressure. And without that pressure on the player, you can play so much safer. The player plays in a way to win. Obviously. I mean, we all play to win. But in Arkham Horror, you make completely desperate, crazy decisions because you just feel you have no choice. You just have to try it. And that is what makes the dice rolling in Arkham Horror so exciting. That, as well as knowing the risks, is that you are taking risks, massive risks. You're not just going, well, I'll do a thing here and take a roll. Like in Arkham Horror, for example, tons of the cards that, the event cards are actually may effects where you choose to do it or not. There wasn't many of these in this game, and I think that should definitely be changed. Now, on the other hand, Eldritch Horror is a vastly improved general system for running a game. They've obviously looked at Arkham Horror and they've thought, if we make a new game, Eldritch Horror, in 6 years, it's going to have, 5-6 expansions. It's going to have an extra couple of thousand cards. How can we change the rules so we don't have this convolution? And also, one of the biggest problems with Arkham Horror is something that the fans call dilution. And that is, the more expansions you throw in, the less Arkham Horror is able to present theme to you. Because, like say you're in Innsmouth and you want to explore Innsmouth and see Dagon and see all that cool stuff because you're running the Innsmouth expansion. If you have all these other expansions, you may play the game and never once see a deep one. Never. Not in the entire game. And that's horrific. So they've designed Eldritch Horror in a way where dilution simply doesn't happen. In fact, they've designed it so cards are specific to the deep one. And not only cards, monsters. The cultists are specific to the deep one. The clues are specific to the deep one, to the old one that you're, fighting. Everything is linked directly to who you're playing. So in a way, when you're playing Shub-Niggurath as we did today, it changes not only its effect on the game, but also a whole bunch of decks that relate to it and the cultists. So dilution doesn't happen. Not in the same way in Arkham Horror. And that is fantastic. And at the same time, because of all the checks and balances with the comets and the icons, and you see the icon and you do the event rather than having to remember it, you're prompted for every action in the game that the game rules require to run the engine of the game, you're prompted. So no matter what they put in, no matter how many expansions you throw in, it's going to be as simple as flipping the card and looking at it to play it. You won't have to remember 500 billion zillion rules. You can just use the base rules and use the cards themselves to instruct you how to play as you play. It's like having someone run the game. The rules are designed to run the game for you. And that is actually fantastic. I mean, that is really cool. So the question is, obviously by now you've probably got the point that I still prefer Arkham Horror. Now, I've played Eldritch Horror many times, at least maybe twice or maybe even 3 times for most of at least twice, but maybe 3 times for most of the old ones. And maybe these problems that I'm feeling within Eldritch Horror will be alleviated through the expansion process. Like in our game, for example, we went through the city deck 2.5 times. We went through the item deck twice. So we were seeing the same things come up. I was able to win that game simply because I knew that X cards were in the item deck and we had a good chance of digging them out. Now that's not going to be the case in a few years when we have all these other things going on, And, we went through the clue deck 3 times. So, as the expansions come out and we get more and more stuff, this could be a problem that would be solved. And because of the check and balance system, I guess you'd call it, that Eldritch Horror runs, it's never going to actually increase the complexity of the game, only the complexity of the storytelling in the game. The things that happen in the game will get more complex, but running the game won't, no matter how much you add to it. And that is amazing. I mean, that is seriously some design genius. The guys that designed Eldritch Horror, they really looked at the crux of what Arkham Horror was and the problems people had with it and tried to fix it. And they mostly did. But, as I said, in doing that, they removed one of the real backbones of the entire game system, which is the continual, never relenting pressure of the Doom track and of just the way the game system works in Arkham Horror. Arkham Horror, no matter how you look at it, is harder. It is harder. You've got to manage your player stats, you've got to manage your funds, you've got to, deal with the continual Doom track, you've got the monsters, the whole way monsters work. You can't just fight a monster and run off. No, you have to fight to the death. There's no escaping the monsters if you start a fight with them. The sneaking effect, you've got to balance between defensive and attacking. None of that is in Eldritch Horror. None of it. Eldritch Horror is an easier game, an incredibly easier version of the game. But that doesn't mean it's bad. It just means that it's not bad. I just think that there is some fundamentally missing parts of Eldritch Horror. But even so, Eldritch Horror is a replacement. Eldritch Horror is a replacement to Arkham Horror. And if I was going to buy a game for someone and they hadn't played Arkham Horror, I would get them Eldritch Horror. I would. It's a better designed game. I mean, it's a massively better designed game. It has some really clever game design, and I guarantee you that you will be seeing ideas from Eldritch Horror popping up in a number of future event-driven games from other companies. Guarantee it. But, that being said, Eldritch Horror does not scratch the same itch that Arkham Horror has. If you are an Arkham Horror fan, if you love Arkham Horror, if you love the way that game makes you feel with every dice throw being a panicking decision and just having so many choices that you can never choose you never know whether you're doing the right thing. I mean, that is not in this game. It's just not in it. And they're different games. Why should they be the same? For me personally, I prefer Arkham Horror at this stage. I mean, like I said, maybe my problems with Eldritch Horror will dissipate as the card pool gets larger and they start introducing more interesting mechanics. But for now, and from my plays over the last few months since it's been released or whatever it is, I just feel that while as good as Eldritch Horror is, it missed the real point of Arkham Horror. It just missed it. And that is the pressure upon the players, forcing them into desperate decision making. Eldritch Horror does not have that, not in my experience. But Arkham Horror, that is all that game is. Well, that's it. I guess the final question is, will I still play Eldritch Horror and get the expansion? And the answer is yes. I will still play Eldritch Horror. And Arkham Horror will probably sit on my shelf unplayed for a long time now. Because Eldritch Horror will constantly have new stuff coming out. It's more interesting. People are going to see it on the shelf. Oh, that's that new game. Let's play it. So maybe this is a nostalgia thing. And maybe after playing Eldritch Horror X amount of times, I'll go back to Arkham Horror and just be like, what was I thinking? But this big spiel, this is what I'm thinking at the moment. And I still have to rate Arkham Horror as having some amazing... It just makes every single time you pick up the dice, it's life or death. And I just love that about that game. And it just gets worse the longer the game goes. It's just amazing. But this game, I just did not have that feeling, and I missed it. I missed it terribly. Okay, so that's pretty much it for this video. As usual, if you've got this far, write down the secret number, which of course is 6 this time. And because I'm always curious to know if people actually get to the end of these videos. And I will see you next time. Don't forget to go to the What's Next video and vote on what we will play next. And I will see you soon. Thanks for watching, everyone, and I'll see you next time. Bye.